Hello and welcome. I am Thomas Porteous and you're watching The World Report. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines this hour. As Trump's new tariffs come into force, Canada slapped 25% tariffs on the US starting on Tuesday. Mexico's president dismisses Trump's cartel alliance slander and vows payback. China also firmly opposes the new tariffs and promises matching countermeasures. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky accuses Russia of striking its own civilians in the Kursk region. Meanwhile, Ukraine's military reports 12 killed in Poltava. A Trump envoy says the US wants Ukraine to hold elections after a ceasefire. Israel's Prime Minister names a new IDF chief and then heads to Washington on Monday for a second phase Gaza truce talks. Palestinian officials say 5 were killed in Israeli airstrikes in the West Bank after the hostage exchange yesterday. At least 56 people have been killed and 158 have been injured in an attack on a Sudanese market as the ongoing civil war escalates. Doctors Without Borders call the situation utter carnage. The US has imposed 25% tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico, along with a 10% tax on China. Canada responds with matching tariffs on US goods valued at $155 billion. Mexico's president vows similar retaliatory actions. China plans countermeasures and a lawsuit at the World Trade Organization. President Trump says the tariffs target illegal immigration and drug trafficking. Let's take a look at the report.
President Donald Trump announced extraordinary new tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China, signing the long-promised economic policy at his Mar-a-Lago club on Saturday. The Trump administration said tariffs are aimed at curbing the flow of drugs and undocumented immigrants into the US, but they potentially risk substantial price increases for American consumers across an array of common goods from avocados to sneakers to cars. Hours later, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said her country will impose retaliatory tariffs. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced far-reaching retaliatory levies.
Tonight, I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods.
China's Commerce Ministry said it will file a complaint with the World Trade Organization and take corresponding countermeasures, without elaborating. The tariffs and subsequent retaliation risk igniting a trade war that could significantly damage the economies of the targeted countries and the United States. In anticipation, Trump's executive action includes a clause that allows the president to expand the tariffs if a country imposes new tariffs on the United States. The new policy represents a reversal of virtually duty-free trade among the three North American nations that's existed for several years, and an expansion of a frosty trade war between China and the United States that has escalated over the past two administrations. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Now let's take a look at some updates from the Indo-Pacific. 4 levies soldiers were killed in Dera Ismail Khan, Pakistan in an attack involving gunfire and an IED blast. The soldiers were retrieving a stolen truck when their vehicle was ambushed. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack, but suspicion likely falls on the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, who have targeted Pakistan security forces for over 15 years. This attack follows a rise in militancy in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. Severe flooding in North Queensland killed 1 person and forced evacuations as torrential rains hit the region. Authorities warned of life-threatening conditions with major flooding in Hinchburg Shire and Townsville. Heavy rainfall from a tropical low-pressure system could continue into next week. Frequent floods have previously battered Australia's east coast, including historic 2023 events. Sydney police reported new anti-Semitic vandalism targeting cars and homes, heightening concerns in Australia's Jewish community. Authorities expanded a task force to combat hate crimes amid rising incidents, including a suspected attack plot. Prime Minister Albanese has denounced anti-Semitism as tensions continued after the Israel-Gaza conflict. An Australian couple, Catherine Delvis and Peter Watt, are stuck on an Indonesian island after their yacht's engine broke down and ran aground on a reef. Rescuers struggled due to rough seas, but locals provided food and shelter. The Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade provided consular assistance to a couple. The couple remains hopeful, relying on local fishermen for assistance. Australia crushed Sri Lanka by an innings and 242 runs, handing them their worst ever Test defeat. Matthew Kahneman took 9 wins as the visitors retained the Warne Murali Dharan Trophy. Usman Khajawar's double century set up Australians' dominance, enforcing a follow-on. Sri Lanka's resistance crumbled with the match ending in 4 days. At least 56 people have been killed and 158 others wounded in a deadly artillery and air attack on a vegetable market in Omdurman, Sudan. The government has blamed the paramilitary RSF, with witnesses reporting heavy shelling and rocket fire from RSF-controlled areas. Here is the full update on the strikes.
A deadly artillery and air attack on Sudan's Omdurman's vegetable market killed at least 56 people and wounded 158. The Sudanese government blamed the paramilitary RSF, with witnesses reporting shells and rockets raining down from RSF-controlled areas. The attack left bodies scattered and emergency crews overwhelmed. Al Nau Hospital, one of the last operational facilities, was inundated with casualties. Doctors Without Borders called the scene utter carnage as medics struggled with shortages of stretchers, blood, and burial shrouds.
There are dozens and dozens of people whose lives have been torn apart, who have lost loved ones, and are seeking critical care at this very moment. I've seen a woman walking through the emergency room, desperately looking for her family members. And I've seen the despair of multiple families as they've discovered that they have lost people just over the last few minutes and hours. The morgue, which is literally just behind me, is overflowing with people.
Meanwhile, in Khartoum, 2 civilians were killed in an airstrike in an RSF-controlled area. As Sudan's war drags on, both the army and RSF stand accused of targeting civilians, deepening a conflict that has already killed tens of thousands and displaced millions. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Let's now take a look at some updates from South America. Within his first 2 weeks in office, US President Donald Trump had sent an emissary to arch rival Venezuela. This was an apparent turn from the hardline approach he adopted during his first term. Trump announced Venezuela had agreed to accept legal migrants deported from US, including gang members. They had even agreed to provide the transport. Trump's envoy, Richard Granell, recently met Maduro himself in Caracas. The meeting opens the door to an improvement in relations. An Ecuadorian judge ordered the arrest of 16 soldiers, charging them with the disappearance of 4 children who went missing 3 weeks ago in the coastal city of Guayaquil. The children were aged between 11 to 15. They were reported missing by their parents on December the 8th. They went to play soccer in a working-class sector of Guayaquil and did not return home. Ecuador's military has admitted the children were in its custody, and they claimed they were arrested because they were participating in a robbery attempt. The military says the children were released on the same night they were detained, and that gangs are to blame for their disappearance. Thousands of Argentines took to the streets of Buenos Aires on Saturday in defense of hard-fought diversity advances. The march took place in order to denounce recent anti-woke pronouncements by President Javier Milei. The colourful procession held aloft the rainbow flag and waved placards stating, "Not a step back." They marched on the Plaza Mayo Square that houses the presidency. It was organised by women's and LGBTQ+ rights groups, with the backing of powerful trade unions and opposition politicians. 2 Colombian Air Force planes were sent to the US to fetch deported migrants have landed in the capital, Bogota. The migrants boarded US military flights headed for Colombia on Sunday. This happened when Colombian President Gustavo Petro barred the US military aircraft from landing. He was arguing that those on board were being treated like criminals. Diplomats from both countries reached a deal where Colombia is sending its own Air Force planes to collect the migrants. Petro said that this process will ensure that they were treated with dignity. Brazil President Lula da Silva is already starting rising down food prices, deepening investor skepticism and falling approval ratings. Now he's getting another challenge, the change in congressional leadership that will test his ability to navigate the country's conservative legislature. A presidential statement that stated that they will work together in the defense of democracy and in building a more developed and less unequal Brazil, with opportunities for all the Brazilian people. Rare footage showing hundreds of 8-legged crawlies raining from the sky has been shown. It is a bizarre and racy phenomenon. Hundreds of spiders are descending from the heavens in a scene. The scenes being shared online were captured on camera in Tariffs de Latra in the stage of Minas Gerais in Brazil. Experts have explained the science behind the strange occurrence. Biologist Chiron Passos said it's a mating ritual for spiders. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has embarked on his inaugural international trip, which includes his visit to El Salvador, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Panama, and the Dominican Republic. Here's an update on the latest developments with a particular focus on Panama.
Marco Rubio kicks off his first international trip as US Secretary of State, landing in Panama to discuss Trump's canal demands. Panamanian police clash with protesters, including students and professors, angered by Trump's threat to take control of the Panama Canal. Students protested on 31st January 2025 in Panama City ahead of Rubio's visit, marking the start of his Central American tour as US Secretary of State. Panamanian flags were seen around Panama City, including at the presidential residence. Trump claimed in the inauguration speech, China is operating the Panama Canal and vowed to take it back from Panama. Rubio will also visit El Salvador, Costa Rica, Guatemala, and the Dominican Republic, where he will meet with regional leaders. While El Salvador and the Dominican Republic seek to strengthen ties with Washington, Panama remains tense, preparing to defend its interests. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Now let's take a look at some news updates from North America. In Sinaloa, northwest Mexico, residents say that drug-fueled violence has gotten so bad that they would welcome Trump's proposal for US military to go after cartels. Trump said he would consider some form of US military action against the cartels and has called for the State Department to label them as foreign terrorist organizations. In Sinaloa, an inter-cartel war has left hundreds dead and people are fed up with violence, and now they are open to Trump's proposal. The race to replace Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is now set. Former central banker Mark Carney and former Deputy Prime Minister Christina Freeland are the two biggest names to have declared their candidacy. Trudeau will step down from the role after 9 years as PM once the governing Liberal Party finds a new leader to replace him. They will announce the winner on the 9th of March. President Trump promised to lower the price of groceries, including eggs, yet egg prices have not fallen since Trump took office on January the 20th. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt gave a news briefing blaming former President Joe Biden's inflammatory policies. Leavitt mentioned that Biden's administration and US Agriculture Department has directed the mass killing of more than 100 million chickens. This has led to a lack of chicken and egg supply. Mexico's agriculture chief wrote in a post that the USA will resume permit of beef imports after signing a memorandum to lift a temporary suspension last November. The beef exports were suspended. He added, the US Department of Agriculture has signed the first memorandum to allow the suspension to be lifted. This ban would be an example of collaboration between the two governments. Petga, a startup in Mexico, is trying to help get a handle on one Gulf Coast city's plastic waste problem by converting it into gasoline, diesel, and other fuels. With less than 10% of the world's plastics being recycled, Petga's idea is rather than letting discarded plastic become waste, it can become productive again as fuel. Petgas envisions a circular economy where plastic is no longer waste, rather a resource for production of energy. London streets turned into a battleground as Tommy Robinson supporters clashed with counter-protesters, with chants, banners and police intervention. The protest exposed deep divisions in British society. Let's take a look at the report.
London witnessed heated demonstrations as thousands of Tommy Robinson supporters took to the streets, calling for his release from Belmarsh prison. Robinson, 42, is serving an 18-month sentence for breaching a High Court injunction. His supporters argue it's politically motivated. Protesters, many waving flags and holding banners, praised billionaire Elon Musk for amplifying their cause on social media.
Because we feel the UK justice system has been unfair to Tommy Robinson, and the representatives in government have been part of the establishment against him, and we want him freed. And we'd just like to say thank you to Elon Musk for America. You're a great help to us in this fight for justice, because he should not be in prison.
Counter-protesters, rallying under anti-racism banners, voiced strong opposition, warning of the dangers of rising far-right movements.
I think broadly you just got increasing inequality, and that tends to always be a reason for people getting angry, and then lots of people then end up turning to the far right as they think that's like a rational outlet, because there's a lot of powerful people who are very good at drumming up anger.
The Robinson supporters blamed mass migration and political elites for what they see as Britain's decline.
Mass migration has absolutely destroyed this country, absolutely destroyed it. Our education system has been torn apart by lefty wokies, and they're getting taught stuff. Our history is getting removed. Culture's not being allowed to be taught properly. We need to rebuild that to ensure our country stays as it should be.
With tensions running high and heavy police presence, the day ended with both sides refusing to back down, exposing deep divisions in British society. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Now let's take a look at some news updates from the world of business. President Trump's new tariffs on Canada and Mexico are expected to disrupt supply chains across multiple industries. The measures are set at 25%, will impact products ranging from automobiles to avocados. US imports from the two countries totaled nearly at $900 billion in 2023, with deeply integrated trade networks. Businesses operating across North America could face higher costs and logistical challenges. Analysts warn that the auto and electronic sectors will be hit especially hard. The tariffs come despite Canada, Mexico, and the US being part of a shared trade agreement. The Indian government on Saturday announced the biggest tax relief in at least a decade to boost consumer demand. They did this to revive growth in the world's fifth largest economy, giving a huge relief to millions of households grappling with high inflation. India's economic growth is expected to slow to a 4-year low this fiscal year due to the weak demand. This will happen particularly in urban areas where the cost of living has soared. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said that the new structure will reduce taxes on the middle class. It will leave more money in their hands, boosting household consumption, savings and investment. UniCredit remains focused on its bid for Banco BPN and its stake in Commerce Bank, despite reports about an investment in Generali. Sources confirmed that UniCredit has been building a stake in the Italian insurer, though it's smaller than previously reported. The bank's investment comes as Generali CEO of Generale Group, Philippe Donnet, faces a leadership battle ahead of his reappointment. UniCredit's stake in Generale was acquired before the 24th of January buyout offer from state-backed Monte dei Paschi di Siena on Mediobanca. Mediobanca, who is Generale's largest investor, is involved in tense negotiations regarding its leadership as a deal with BPCE. UK banking giant Barclays is still facing service disruptions due to its glitch affecting payments and account balances. The disruption began on January the 31st, coinciding with payday for many workers and the last day for self-assessed tax returns. Barclays warned that the issues may persist on February the 2nd, with some customers seeing outdated balances and missing payments. While there were some concerns about a cyber attack, the outage is believed to be technical in nature. Customers have expressed frustrations over the timing of disruption. Tesla CEO Elon Musk's comments on government workers having weekends off have sparked renewed debate on the 90-hour working week. Kodak manager AMC's Nilesh Shah questioned whether Musk would face the same backlash and memes as L&T chairman Sabrania, or he will receive praise for being Elon Musk. Shah pointed to criticism faced by Infosys co-founder Narinya Mishrai over his push for 70-hour work weeks. Shah asked how people would react to Musk's comment, wondering if he'd get memes or appreciation on his Twitter. The debate highlights differing opinions on work-life balance in the corporate world. Ukraine has accused Russia of bombing a boarding school sheltering civilians in Sudan, killing at least 4 and injuring dozens. President Zelensky condemned the attack as barbaric. Meanwhile, in Poltava, a Russian missile kills 12. Let's have a look at the full report.
Ukraine has accused Russia of bombing a boarding school sheltering civilians in Sudzha, a town in the Kursk region currently under Ukrainian control. The attack, which Ukrainian officials describe as deliberate, resulted in at least 4 deaths and dozens of injuries. The incident has sparked outrage, with President Zelensky condemning Russia's actions as barbaric, calling them a display of a state devoid of civility. The school, which had been housing evacuees, was struck by a guided aerial bomb. Moscow, however, has denied responsibility, blaming Ukraine for the bombing. In another deadly attack, a Russian missile struck a residential building in Poltava, killing at least 12 people, including 2 children. The blast destroyed the building and caused extensive damage, while emergency crews continued their search for survivors. Meanwhile, the United States has voiced its support for Ukraine to hold elections by the end of the year, provided a truce with Russia is reached. Trump's administration is considering pushing for a ceasefire and elections as part of a broader peace plan, though the details remain unclear. However, President Zelensky has expressed willingness to hold elections, but only with strong security guarantees to protect Ukraine from renewed Russian aggression. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Now let's take a look at some news updates from Europe. Dozens of migrants left Italian-run facilities in Albania after judges in Rome rejected their detention. This marked a setback for Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's controversial migrant scheme. An Italian boat carrying 43 migrants departed Albania for Italy after the latest group was transferred under the plan to speed up reparations. The European Court of Justice is reviewing legal issues surrounding the plan, which has faced criticism from rights groups. Despite setbacks, the Italian government remains committed to the initiative. Tens of thousands of protesters in Novi Sad, Serbia, blocked roads and occupied bridges on Saturday. The protests mark 3 months since the deadly train station collapse took place. The protest, led by university students, is part of ongoing anti-corruption demonstrations triggered by the November incident that killed 15 people. It led to the resignation of high-ranking officials, including Prime Minister Milos Velikovic, and calls for further government concessions. Horst Kohler, the well-liked German president, died at the age of 81 after a brief illness. The German president said that he was suffering from a short, serious illness. He took his last breath surrounded by his family in the morning. He served as the head of state from 2004 to 2010 and was also the former head of the International Monetary Fund. Norwegian authorities released the Silver Dania, a cargo ship with all Russian crew, after investigating its suspected involvement in damaging a Baltic Sea telecoms cable, finding no connection to the incident. The ship was seized at the request of Latvian authorities, but police in Tromsø stated no evidence was found linking it to the sabotage. The Silver Sea Shipping Group, which owns the vessel, denied any involvement. Sweden and Latvia are continuing investigations into the cable damage, which follows a series of infrastructure outages in the Baltic since Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine. Friedrich Merz, once the frontrunner for Germany's chancellorship, has faced a setback just weeks before the national election. 12 of his own lawmakers refused to back a crucial migration bill. The bill, which failed to pass in Parliament, was likely a key point of contention. Merz, leading the Conservative bloc, had previously stirred controversy by suggesting he would pass the law with support from the far right. Despite leading the polls throughout the campaign, his approach to the migration issue raised disillusionism within his party. The failure comes at a critical time for Merz's political future. And that is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from across the world.